Dear Scare Mail, what is the scariest haunting tale you've ever come across? The Amityville Horror? The Exorcism of Emily Rose? There's simply too many to choose from. But what if I told you there's an equally petrifying story that has since long been forgotten? You see, in 1972, the Smurl family found themselves without a home when Hurricane Agnes brought upon the Great Flood of 1972. Causing over $2 billion in damages, the most costly hurricane to hit the United States at that time. After this wake of destruction, the Smurl family moved to West Pittston, Pennsylvania, to occupy a duplex owned by one of their parents. The Smurls didn't know it at the time, but living as refugees would soon become the least of their worries, for the house they had just moved into would end up becoming one of the most haunted homes in U.S. history. Join me as we delve into the unfortunate and harrowing story of the Smurl Family Haunting. But first, as always, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, along with leaving a comment down below to ensure your scare mail continues to get delivered. Without further ado, let's get on with the story. January 1974. Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their family, were slowly but surely getting settled into their new home. They had fallen on hard times, but that didn't mean they had to live in an outdated home. Being built in 1896, the duplex they now shared with Jack's parents had quite a lot of work that needed to be done. So, Jack and Janet got to work on self-renovating the home, hoping that the ensuing project would keep their minds off the unfortunate situation they were now in. Only, little did they know that altering the home was when all their real problems started to begin. Jack had begun applying primer paint to the walls of the living room. The bare white paint itself was an improvement over the outdated wallpaper plastered around the house, and Jack was starting to feel more and more at home with each stroke of the brush. Eventually, Jack came across something that not only halted his progress, but left he and Janet completely stumped. On parts of the wall with missing wallpaper, a mysterious black ooze began to seep through the cracks of the home. It wasn't much, but the foul smell was enough to completely clear the room. Reluctantly, they cleaned up as much of it as they could and continued on with the job, hoping that the layers of paint would keep the smell at bay. But the Smurl family would soon learn that they'd need a lot more than mere paint to protect them from what was coming. Sometime later, the Smurl family was peacefully watching television in their newly renovated living room. The past few months had been a struggle, but Jack and Janet's vision for their new home was finally coming into frame. However, what would occur that night would end up flipping that vision completely upside down. As they were watching a late-night talk show, the picture strangely started to cut in and out. Jack stood up to investigate, but before he could even make it over to the TV, it abruptly burst into flames before his very eyes. After a frantic scramble to put out the fire, Jack and Janet came across something peculiar. You see, their first thought was that it was an electrical fire, only to discover that the TV caught fire from within. There were no signs of sparks or electrical failure from the outlet or the power cord, so the Smurls had no idea how the TV could have caught fire. Even so, they assumed that the television must have been faulty, and thought that was the end of it. Only, it wasn't. That very same week, other things started to catch fire within the house. The toaster nearly burned down the kitchen one morning without being used, and if that wasn't strange enough, furniture within the house started mysteriously moving without anyone being in the room. Despite all this, the family figured this was a case of bad luck, and went about their lives regularly. Unfortunately for them, the spirit tormenting the family had other plans. If the subtle hints weren't enough to send the family a message, then it was time to introduce itself, face to face. Dawn, the family's eldest daughter, was getting ready for bed one night. She had just finished brushing her teeth as she made her way into her bedroom when she saw something alarming. As she turned the corner, she noticed a black mist mysteriously hovering in the corner of her bedroom. It startled her at first, but she figured it was just a shadow cast by the lamp next to her bed. When she moved closer to investigate, the mist slowly began to take shape. Dawn froze in fear as the mist formed into a towering black shadow in the shape of a fully grown man. Nothing could be heard but a light hissing coming from the mysterious entity. Dawn trembled as the being approached her, hovering towards her in a ghastly display until... Jack and Janet ran upstairs in a hurry to find their daughter laying on the ground in tears. They consoled their daughter the best they could, explaining that whatever frightened her was just a nightmare. But Dawn was completely inconsolable, explaining to her parents that it couldn't have been a nightmare, considering she was awake the entire time. Not only that, but there was physical evidence to the encounter, with Jack discovering harrowing claw marks on his daughter's arms. This stunning discovery led Jack and Janet to believe they weren't the only ones residing in the house, and something drastic had to be done to free their family of this torment. Out of desperation, the family hired a local priest to come bless the house, and despite having the priest pray in every room of the home, nothing out of the ordinary occurred during the blessing. Once completed, the priest left and the mysterious occurrences abruptly stopped. In the years that followed, life went back to normal for the Smurl family, as they entered a time of peace and prosperity, until, one fateful night, the spirit lurking within decided to remind the family who was still in charge with its most gruesome message yet. During this time of so-called peace, Jack had begun coaching Dawn's basketball team, which found Janet at home alone with Shannon and Kara, the two younger daughters, more often. One night while cleaning up from dinner, the two girls ran upstairs to get ready for bed, while Janet remained in the kitchen. While washing the dishes, strange things started to happen that Janet couldn't explain. Out of nowhere, a kitchen drawer opened and slammed shut abruptly, causing a very loud noise. Startled, Janet swung around to see nobody there with her. She checked the drawer only to discover that there was nothing wrong with it. Then, all of a sudden, Janet heard a series of loud footsteps, one after the other, coming from the basement. Thinking that Jack and Dawn came home without her noticing, Janet walked on over to the stairwell, only to find it completely empty. Not only that, but a horrible odor started to linger about the house. She described it as a smell of death and despair. Janet now found herself completely on edge when, suddenly, the radio inexplicably turned on. With loud music now echoing throughout the home, Janet slowly walked over to turn it off, only to stop dead in her tracks upon realizing what song was playing.
With the best, watch while the headlines did the rest. In the depression, was I depressed? Nowhere near. 'Cause I met a big financier, and I'm here.
With the song I'm Still Here coming to a close, Janet clicked off the radio, and as soon as she did, a loud scream could be heard coming from upstairs. Janet, in a panic, ran to the stairs, only to see her daughter, Shannon, violently hurled down the stairs by a mysterious force. Janet braced for the stumbling Shannon at the bottom of the staircase, but before she could catch her, Janet herself was grabbed by the neck by the same dark entity. It held her high up in the air, intensifying its grip around her neck as it slowly choked her out. The family dog, now up in arms, barked furiously as it came to its family's aid. In an instant, the being effortlessly tossed Janet across the room and then grabbed the poor dog in the same manner before repeatedly bashing it against the wall. Luckily, Jack and Dawn stormed in at this very moment, causing all of the commotion to cease immediately. In tears, the family begged Jack for them to leave at once. Realizing that enough was enough, Jack and the others packed their things and fled the house, but that wouldn't be the end of it. The Smurls weren't going to give up their house so easily, and decided to call in the big guns in a last-ditch effort to save their home. Not too long after, Jack and Janet contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous ghost hunting duo that made a name for themselves by investigating numerous hauntings throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Ed had just finished recovering from a heart attack and was eager to hop back on the road with his wife to continue their investigations. But they were unaware that this would be one of the most difficult cases to tackle yet. Upon arrival to the home, they heard shouting and growls coming from within the home without anyone even being there. After further investigation, Lorraine, being a psychic medium, detected that the house was infested with demonic energy. They believed a total of 4 spirits inhabited the home, one of which was a very powerful demon who used the other 3 spirits to sow uncertainty among the family. Understanding that they were outmatched, the Warrens and Smurls reached out to the local priest once again to perform another blessing of the home. However, the priest declined the invitation, believing the matter had already been resolved with the previous blessing. Even after the Warrens insisted, the priest still refused the call, stating that he had more important matters to attend to, such as a wedding taking place later that week that he had to prepare for. Frustrated by this development, the Warrens contacted an old friend of theirs, a priest from Connecticut by the name of Father Robert McKenna, in hopes to have him perform an exorcism to expel the demonic entities. Father McKenna agreed and soon made his way down to Pennsylvania to perform the exorcism alongside the Warrens. Once there, Father McKenna walked from room to room, praying in Latin as he sprinkled holy water around the house. The exorcism was going smoothly, and all signs were pointing toward it being a success. However, toward the end of the exorcism, the walls began to shake as a deep roar echoed throughout the home. Windows cracked and ached as a harrowing warning was inexplicably written on one of the fractured mirrors. It read, plainly, "Get out." After the terrifying experience, the Warrens and McKenna agreed that this was way beyond them, so they called upon the Vatican to send out an exorcist to put an end to this once and for all. Unfortunately, their cries for help fell on deaf ears, as the Vatican failed to return any of their messages. Finally taking matters into their own hands, the Smurls decided to take their story public in a desperate plea for help, only to be inundated by news networks and reporters. With a media circus now engulfing their lives, on top of the demonic activity continuing to plague them, all hope for living a normal life was quickly fading until their prayers were finally answered. After nearly a decade of torment, the very same priest that rejected them arrived with a peace offering. He informed the Smurls that the Vatican had taken notice of their plight and was sending their most seasoned exorcist to come assist them. The ploy to get the Vatican's attention had worked. Soon after, another exorcism took place that would end up ridding the house of all demonic presence. Despite this victory, the Smurls decided to move out of the house anyway, believing that a fresh start was needed for the entire family. With the hauntings now behind them, the Smurls were now free to move on and live a life of normalcy. Eventually, another couple moved into the home and never reported any strange occurrences taking place. The Smurls were now free, and so was the home itself. The Smurl Family Haunting has gone down as one of the most disturbing family hauntings in history, and despite having a book and a movie to recount its tale, the story has largely been forgotten over time. However, that can be seen as a good thing. You see, the demonic activity was at its peak when the family was well aware of its existence. The demon used this anxiety against the family in order to better torment them, so it's safe to say any demon or spirit is merely as prevalent as we allow them to be. This, of course, is an oversimplification in some ways. However, demons, whether internal or external, are only powerful if we choose to dwell on them. This can be a stark reminder that, like the Smurl family, it's best to leave the past in the past and to look onward to the future. Wow, now that was a crazy one. But if you're looking for more content like this, check out one of my older videos right here. Thanks for watching, and good night.